You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and thanks for coming back again for episode number 123 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I've actually been thinking of changing that tagline, by the way. I'm 66 and midlife crises are somewhere in my rearview mirror. Maybe a better tagline would be a silly old fool's reflections. Anyway, after we had a show last week with two young men, this week we're moving to the ladies. Once again, both young and independent. As I know I've said before on the show, the young women I met in 2014 on the Appalachian Trail were so strong and so determined that they left the greatest impression upon me. Today, we have two others in exactly the same mould. The main guest is Jessie Greger, and Jessie was brought to my attention by a listener, Clay Cooper. I'm so glad that he gave me her contact details. This show is all about inspiring you, empowering you, and hopefully informing you a little on your hiking journeys. From my emails, I can tell that we're doing a pretty good job in this regard. Jessie hiked the PCT in 2017, and she did it in such a specific way that I thought she'd make a great guest on the show. I won't spoil it for you, but I can tell you that she'll certainly make you think the next time you pack your food bag. Jessie will be along soon. The other young Amazonian woman is Katie Amphlett, our latest member of the Mighty Blue class of 2019. Katie is a kindergarten teacher and very clear in her preparations for the trip. You'll love Katie when we hear from her after Jessie. And one more thing before we start. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but do you recall last week's mess up on my part when I simply didn't turn on my microphone and ended up chatting with Michael Duncan through my laptop mic? Yep, well, I did it again this week. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm away from what I'm used to and in a foreign country, but I keep making stupid errors. The good thing is that Jessie did nearly all the talking this week, so it was fine. Here's Jessie. Now, this is going to be a bit of a departure of the show. Yes, it's about a hiker, but no, she hasn't done the Appalachian Trail through hike, though she has done parts of it. This is Jessie Greger, and Jessie has through hiked the PCT. Hi, Jessie, how are you doing?
Doing well, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm all right. We're 9 hours ahead of you, and I just said I'm about to have a glass of wine, and she at 9 o'clock in the morning on the Pacific Coast is looking forward to a glass of wine as well. I'm not terribly sure when, though.
To be clear, I'm drinking some coffee, so I've got some
time. Near enough. Now, there's a specific reason to have you on the trail, quite apart from the fact that you're a hiker, because you did the PCT in 2017, but you did it in a very specific way. Tell us what you did.
Sure. So at home, I keep what's called a ketogenic diet, meaning that I generally eat low carb, no bread, no rice, which at home is, a general, fun challenge to have. A lot of people do it for health reasons, for weight reasons, or overall well-being. But to do it on trail is it was a bit of a difficult process. If your listeners are familiar with through hiking, just hiking culture in general, then they know that there's no Snickers, there's no ramen noodles, there's none of the typical hiker fare that's available to you to kind of make your food options on a trail inexpensive. They were off limits to me. And so I had to find a way to eat on trail that was mostly proteins and fats and vegetables.
So let's step back here then, because this isn't something that I know anything about other than the fact that I've Googled it, which makes me, of course, a worldwide expert right now. and as soon as you put in ketogenic, one of the first things that comes up, funny enough, is ketogenic diet cancer. And I thought, oh my God, what's that all about? And it actually says that growth of human gastric cancer cells in nude mice is delayed by a ketogenic diet supplemented with omega-3 fatty acids and medium-chain triglycerides. And then I went down this rabbit hole, as you do in Google, of finding out various other things of how some people say that they believe it could really be a really, really healthy way to not only protect your body, but also protect you against cancer. While I know you're not making those claims, it's clear there's something that's particularly interesting about a ketogenic diet. So firstly, how did you get onto it?
Yeah. So to be clear, definitely I'm on the not a doctor spectrum. I worked in tech for many years, and so definitely not a part of the medical community. But I started doing it for health reasons. I was feeling absolutely atrocious after a group trip to India, and I was gaining weight when everyone else in my group was losing weight, and we were eating the same things, and my mood was fluctuating between like these incredible, like, not manic episodes, but just a lot of energy, and like then suddenly just like no energy, and not sadness, just no energy. And I went to the doctor, and she said, she's like, it's not it's not depression or bipolar. She's like, your metabolism is just kind of off kilter, which is why your energy is the only thing that's fluctuating. Try this diet, try cutting out carbs. And she said it sort of casually. It wasn't like a directive of like, this will change your life. But I figured, why not? And my dad had done, similar diets growing up. So he had done Atkins and South Beach, and I was familiar with the concept of a low carb diet, but hadn't really ever taken it on myself because it didn't feel like a thing that, like, I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose. I wasn't, obese or needed to, make a New Year's resolution to drop some weight. So took it on to sort of, very shruggy about it. And within 2 weeks, I felt awesome. I felt like a superhuman. Like, I was waking up with the sun every morning. I had boundless energy, but like easy to fall asleep at night. My insomnia disappeared. My mood leveled out. And I was like, oh, I've like unlocked something here. This is great.
Well, let me ask you then about that. So if that affected you and yet you got on this group trip to India, is it a specific body type, or how does it affect different people? Do you know?
I think it's very much your miles may vary. I think that the same sort of people that are prone to diabetes or prone to overeating, or if you have thyroid conditions, I think there's all these different things that our body does that impacts our metabolism. And, as a hiker, you like, the moment you watch your hiker hunger come over, that your metabolism has such a huge part to play in both like your daily moods and your daily energy.
Sure.
And I think that it's just one of those underlying things that not a lot of people look at as a primary driver of how we're feeling and how we're acting. And so, yes, I think that every person's body is entirely different. I think it's worth trying, and I'm definitely not evangelical about it. I don't preach from the rooftops about how everyone should cut out the rice and the beans and the bread. But for me, it worked really well, and it works really well for a lot of people. You mentioned
do you
earlier.
Miss them? Do you miss them?
Carbs?
Yes, like bread. I mean, some of the great things in the world are bread, potato, pasta, and rice, aren't they? So,
oh yeah, my two favorite foods are bread pudding, and I mean, it literally has bread in the name, and pancakes. So there's definitely a bit of a miss there, but it's the same thing when people like have to cut out dairy because maybe it breaks out their skin, whatever it is. Like, you have to walk away from something because you feel better on the other side. Like, it makes it a little bit easier to sort of just process and go forward with. If you were trying to lose weight and you said, well, do you miss donuts? Well, yeah, of course you miss donuts, but you recognize that they're not good for you and they make you feel terrible. So it makes walking away a bit easier.
Well, when I was doing this deep dive into Wikipedia, as you do, I came across with quite a good definition. It says the ketogenic diet is a high-fat, adequate protein, low-carbohydrate diet that in medicine is used primarily to treat difficult to control epilepsy in children, which is another thing. And the diet forces the body to burn fats rather than carbohydrates. So what is the theory? Do you basically starve yourself of carbs and provide the fat that the body still needs to burn? Is that basically it?
Yeah, close to it. So if, let's say, I consume 2,000 calories a day, the old way I could just eat a plate of pasta and some Alfredo sauce and some chicken. But if I eat the same amount of calories, but now I'm just eating like maybe the chicken and a salad and that fatty Alfredo sauce, your body is getting the exact same nutrients. It's still getting the same 3,000 or 2,000 calories, but it goes, so if carbs are really easy to burn, our bodies are lazy. They don't want to have to like struggle to burn calories and get energy. So it looks at the sugar first, and carbs are sugar. And so it goes, oh, cool, I can easily make those into glucose. I'm just going to ignore the fat. I'm going to store it for later and like maybe get to it eventually. And for most of Americans, we never get to it eventually. And so that's why our entire culture is a little bit overweight. But if you starve your body of that, and to starve is a bad phrase for it, but if you swap over the calorie source from carbs to fat, getting the same 2,000 calories a day, then your body goes, oh no, the easy way is not available to me anymore. I can't take a shortcut. Okay, I guess I have to switch into essentially a new gear and learn how to burn this fat source instead for fuel. And so it's like going from like an automatic car to like a manual transmission. It's a different way of learning, but your body has to do the same thing. One just requires a little bit more effort. And so once you're in what's called ketosis, now ketosis is the state of when you start burning fat, the body produces ketones as fuel. When you're in ketosis, that's sort of like where you go through a bit of an adjustment when your body breaks its addiction to sugar. And then you come out the other side feeling like I did, a little bit superhero-like, and lots of energy and all that.
Is that what it is then? Is it actually literally breaking an addiction to sugar, which I'm sure most of the Western world has, I suspect?
Absolutely. It's the same thing where if you are a coffee addict, like I'm literally sitting here with a cup of coffee as my second one. And so I'm guilty of this. If you decide to go without coffee for a little while, you have headaches, you feel sick, you feel cranky. That's your body breaking an addiction. It's found a really easy source of, in coffee's case, energy and the ability to wake up in the morning. And it's unhappy you've changed that pattern. Same thing is true of sugar and carbs, and they're definitely the same thing. So to say I cut back on sugar, but I keep eating bread and sugary fruits like apples and melons, it's not exactly like the whole split there. Like your body still has to be cut off from its source of whatever the addiction is. And here the addiction is easily converted energy fuel.
Right. So when you thought about doing the PCT, you were on this ketogenic diet already. So give us an idea of how your diet changed then, because if you're already on it, say in the months leading up to it, what were you eating a day? And then once you got on the trail, what were you eating a day?
Yeah. So before the trail, I think my typical day was I'd wake up, I maybe would have some eggs and bacon and avocado for breakfast, and lunch might be some chicken, some like fatty chicken, like chicken thighs with some sauce and some sauteed like zucchini. Dinner could be a steak and broccoli. It's really pretty wide open. If you like a lot of our favorite.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
sounds like a good day to me.
It's absolutely amazing. That's why I thought it would be super restrictive, but I'm not eating like rice cakes all day. It's a really hearty diet, and it's not restrictive at all, other than you can't have bread. So my days before the trail were, lots of good fats and avocados and oils and all the calorie dense foods.
Well, hang on, before we do that, then go on to what was on the trail. So good fats and bad fats. What are good and what are bad then?
So good fats meaning like olive oil and avocado oil and the fats you find in like animal meats. Bad fats are like vegetable oil, canola oil, things that are, if it was made in a factory, it's not a good fat. It's not a good oil. And you can have bad fats or less bad fats and more like bad calories. Like if you can have the same number of calories in sugar versus in a teaspoon of butter, do the butter. The butter's better for you. And so it's just a matter of making the right choices in your everyday meals.
Okay, so then you had to start thinking about, you were going to do the PT. Now you've been a hiker for some time, right? I understand.
Yeah, mostly 3-day backpacking trips. I did the Wonderland Trail over 7 or 8 days, but nothing at all to this extent. And so when I started looking around, and I had decided to hike the trail with a friend who is not ketogenic. And so he started Googling what his diet would look like. And he's like, cool. He's like, I get to eat like a 5th grader on a school bus. I get to eat Snickers bars all day. This is going to be great. And I was just sort of going, oh, I'm in trouble. This is going to be problematic. So I started like digging around, and he's planning out his ramen bombs, and he's planning out, like how many different types of Cliff Bars can he try before he gets bored of them. And I'm just trying to figure out how to find a way to put like meat and vegetables into backpacking food. And I'm struggling, and everything in the store, I walked into the sporting goods store, and it was, mac and cheese. Well, can't have that. That has pasta. Or rice and beans. Well, can't have that. That has rice. Yeah. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to hike. I was like, this isn't possible. I have to go off diet and go back to feeling crappy and just mood swings and tired, which is not how you want to feel on a through hike.
No.
Or I got to figure out my own stuff. And so I started researching, what would keep, how to make it keep dehydrated, freeze dried, what spices did well, how to get fat, packed into small enough containers that I could bring on to the trail. And I ended up with like a really robust menu option of, I found ways to get calories into my coffee in the morning. I had powdered heavy cream and powdered MCT powder. So my morning coffee was 300-400 calories alone. And then I would snack
Really?
on. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. It was a nice little like wake up bowl.
I would think.
And then throughout the day, it was the same thing that, that all thru hikers do. You're snacking constantly. So my hip belts were filled with just different things. Instead of Snickers bars, it was, freeze dried cheese or dehydrated, meat or jerky without sugar. And it was just choosing things that were slightly different. And then came to dinner. And I mean, as hikers know, you want a hearty dinner. You want to sit down at the end of a long day and just like not have to worry about it and just shove food in your face and to try to stave off the hiker hunger. But I was having trouble finding, again, commercially available options. So I ended up making like small little meal packs, the same way a lot of hikers do, just, compiling all the ingredients, like learning how to dehydrate your own meals. And I ended up with like a bunch of recipes, like from beef tacos and buffalo ranch chicken. And like every night was a different ketogenic meal, which meant that each meal was 500, 600, 700 calories. Then I could add oil to it if I wanted to. I packed little olive oil packets, and then cheese and vegetables, and they were more colorful and better tasting than most of my hiker friends.
That's the interesting thing. So you decided to do this, but as you know, it's a really calorie-rich environment in terms of what you burn. So did you seek medical advice from your doctor, or in fact any advice from any other hiker who'd ever done this ketogenically?
Yes and no. I had mentioned it. I think that if you tell any doctor you're about to go burn 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories a day by walking from Mexico to Canada, the hardest way possible, I think most of them would look at you like you were crazy. And if you look at a lot of the pictures, and as many of your listeners probably know, the way that like we all felt at the end of trail, like a little bit emaciated, skin and bones, our bodies were just starved for energy. My body didn't look like that. And so I didn't ask for medical advice beforehand. Should I have? Probably. But the recommendation that I have is that, if you're going to try it, get what's called keto adapted. You do it for 3, 4, 5 weeks before your hike to make sure that your body is fully switched over. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. And then when I finished the hike, when I started the hike, I was fully keto adapted, stayed keto. I want to say like 98% through. I definitely like went off keto. I ate an entire jar of peanut butter, which is not exactly totally ketogenic. It's keto if you squint. But then got through it mostly intact, and then finished looking healthier than all of my hiking friends. And that
I
was
want to come back to that.
Yeah.
That's the bit I want to come back to in a minute. But I want to ask this. So this thing, which is quite important, I think. So if somebody wants to do this, and it makes a lot of sense because you're going to tell us in a minute how it impacted you at the end of the day, which I really like that. You said you have to be adapted into. I'm asking the stupid questions here, so bear with me. So you have to be living ketogenically for a period of time before you, because if you just start on day one, that's just not going to work for you. Is that right?
Yeah. So some people have easier times with it than others. But if you decide like tomorrow, or a lot of people are going to decide this on January 1st, it's a common New Year's resolution. I'm going to eat, ketogenically for the new year and lose a bunch of weight and get healthier and get in shape. From day 1 until about, I want to say like day 14, your body is adjusting. It's learning how to burn an entirely new fuel source. Maybe the automatic and manual car wasn't the best idea, but gasoline versus diesel, like you have to swap over. And so if you decide on day 3 that you're going to go live in the woods, like you might end up with headaches and leg cramps, all the things that you would experience just trying to kick an old habit. And so, yes, it's highly recommended that you are what's called fully keto adapted, meaning your body has just learned how to use this new fuel source of fat instead of carbs, and isn't struggling with that transition anymore, that it just accepts it as like, this is the new norm, this is the new reality. And that's when I said, you start waking up with the sun and you feel great and your energy is there. And so, yeah, I strongly recommend that you do the keto adaptation period, which just means keeping below 25 net carbs generally per day. There's a lot of calculators online that help you figure out what your macros are, how much protein and carbs and fat should you be eating to stay.
To give us some idea of that then. So what is 25? You say you say below 25 net carbs. What does that mean?
Here in the States, we calculate carbohydrates a little bit differently. So if you look at the nutrition label on any food available in the grocery store, you have all of your different, vitamins and saturated fats and all that. But the 3 main 4, I guess, you need to look at are fats, proteins, and then carbohydrates. And then carbohydrates are broken down sort of differently in the States than they are elsewhere. We put sugars, of course, because they're carbohydrates. We also put fiber in there. Fiber actually isn't a carb because it's not a net carb. We don't digest it the same way. It actually passes through our body pretty cleanly, which is why it's a great digestive tract cleaner. And so when a product, let's say, like an avocado might have 5 grams of carbs, but 2 grams of fiber, then we subtract the 2 from the 5 and we end up with 3 net carbs. And
that's
so
a bonus.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
so the same thing that your doctor would say, like eat fibrous foods, eat spinach and greens. Like so do people on keto. Like we love fibrous foods because we get a lot of bulk in our stomach without feeling hungry. We get to eat a lot, and it doesn't count towards a sugar craving at all. So yeah, so it unfortunately requires a little bit of math, but if you can do the net carb subtractions, then yeah, stay under 25 net carbs per day is general rule of thumb. But again, your miles may vary.
So what is that? Tell me what 25 net carbs are. It sounds like it's eight avocados for a start. So that's your 24. So, so that's probably not the best way to do it. So what are carbs and what can you eat? So could you, for example, eat potatoes?
No, generally no. Some versions of keto aren't. I wouldn't say they're really keto. Like people that do paleo, it's a keto adjacent way of eating, and they're allowed to have sweet potatoes on their diet because sweet potatoes are lower in carbs than say white potatoes. But generally speaking, it's a starch, and so starches are a big no in the keto world.
Okay, right. What's a big yes then? Apart from avocados. Which, by the way, I love avocados, but I don't think I could live on avocados all day long. So it's got to be more than that.
I thought that I would get sick of avocados, but I was begging my mail drop buddy to like put an underripe avocado in every single mail drop I had, and I did. I never tired of them. They were amazing on trail. But yeah, so like to give you kind of like a baseline, like a piece of bread might have 10 carbs. You can have 2 pieces of bread in your entire day and then nothing else. So I don't recommend you do that. But some of the better objects are like, so meats are great, whether they're steaks or chicken or jerky, if it doesn't have, preservatives in it. Vegetables are fantastic. So zucchinis and it's things that are low on the glycemic index. So things that are low sugar content. So oranges aren't okay, but like strawberries and blueberries in moderation are okay. And it's just knowing what you're eating, which is a good rule of thumb, regardless of what diet or what you're hoping to get out of it. Like you should know what you're eating. And, through hikers like study the nutritional labels, like, like they're in college. And so it's the same thing. Just know what you're putting in your body and do the math and keep track of it for a little while. And I always recommend to people, like, even if you don't want to go keto, even if you're just looking to be a little more aware of what you're eating, just track it for a while. Just look at the nutrition labels, write it down. And at the end of the day, go like, oh, wow, I had like 150 grams of carbs. That's way more than I thought I was consuming. And
I know at the end of my hike, I was having 6 Snickers a day and a jar of peanut butter a day.
Yeah.
It's a winning combination, let me tell you.
Yeah. And the nice thing, though, is that the reason you were eating a jar of peanut butter a day, and the reason why I was eating a jar of peanut butter a day, was because it's high in fat. It's fat dense. And so the same thing that makes peanut butter a great through hiker tool and olive oil in packets a great through hiker tool are the same things that make keto a great option for hikers. Is that all the things that hikers add to their hiking diet to boost up the calorie intake are the things that keto hikers already are eating just in and of itself. And it's a little more hoops to jump through, but it's better for you overall if that's the way you want to eat.
Yeah. So what were the logistics of doing the hike in this way? I mean, are they the same as everybody else? Because I presume you can't just go into your local Walmart and get what you need, or maybe you can.
Correct. Well, so you can, if you go into like a larger grocery store, be it a Walmart or a Safeway, then you can, if there was a Safeway available in every single one of the trail towns, you could totally do this without mail drops. The same way a regular hiker would do without mail drops. But what makes it challenging is I didn't know what these towns looked like. You don't know what you don't know. And so I didn't want to rely on being told that there was a grocery store in town and finding out that the only thing that looked even remotely ketogenic was like 10 packets of Spam. Like that was not a good time for me. And so without the certainty of like, and you probably experienced this, like as you walk into trail town and you formalize what the trail town looks like in your mind after having walked towards it for a week. Like it always like, it's this funny, like, sort of split cognition thing where you're like, I imagined it one way and it was an entirely different thing. So I didn't want to like rely on that entirely. And so I was like, well, I just have to mail drop all of my food, which is a strategy some, regular through hikers take. It's challenging. You have to have a mail drop buddy. And so my partner wasn't able to hike with me that year. And so he stayed at home and mail dropped me all of my food, and he had very elaborate spreadsheets and calculations to like track my miles per day. So he knew that he's very type A, and he's a software engineer. So of course he was like, well, she's burning X amount of calories at this pace, and I should be sending her X amount of ounces of olive oil to like make up for it was,
oh, wow.
It was lovely and insane, and I adore him for it, but it's not necessary for everybody. What most people that, picture, if you've thru hiked before, or if you haven't, like if you've thru hiked before, then you know what it looks like to mail drop a box of food to a town that maybe only has a post office and a gas station, and you
Sure.
don't want to be living off of Twinkies and Fritos for the next stretch. So you've maybe mailed ahead a box of food for yourself. It's that same process, just like in almost every town. In retrospect, I probably could have gotten away with the grocery store. Maybe there's like 5 or 6 major trail towns that had totally fine grocery stores, but I didn't want to rely on them without knowing what I was getting into.
It's probably more easy to do, I suspect, on the Appalachian Trail, funnily enough, because there are that many more road crossings and so on. Because you went in 2017, which was, I know, was a very high snow year in the Sierras.
Yeah.
Did that impact your ability to stick with the diet?
I didn't think it would. And I think that I was more worried about it in the beginning. When I got dropped off at the trail down in Campo, the guy who dropped us off was the father of my hiking buddy. And so he was a doctor, he was a cardiologist. And so I had told him what I was doing and how I was eating, and he just shook his head, and I overheard him tell my hiking buddy, like, she won't make it 100 miles. And I was just
Nice.
oh no, like I'm also incredibly stubborn. So I was like, well, I'll prove him wrong. But I was also heartbroken. And then started hiking and realized within 2 days, I was totally fine. And it wasn't until I got to the Sierras that I was like, oh, this might be a little different, but I don't think it was because of my diet. My diet actually makes it a bit easier to thru hike. The like I said before, the oils and the nut butters that other hikers add to their diet to boost their calorie intake are the things that I was already eating. And so my day bags, the amount of food that I had in a given day, weighed less than my fellow hikers, because it was more calories per ounce. So I was eating macadamia nuts, not peanuts, and I was eating olive oil and not Snickers bars. Not to say I was eating olive oil straight. I don't recommend that.
No, because Snickers bars straight are fantastic.
Yeah,
They really are.
They always sound good the first 2 or 3, and then like I imagine by like the second or third month, you're like, oh my god, I never want to open another wrapper again.
Oh no, I love them still.
Yeah, some people, man. But yeah, I got to the Sierras, and unfortunately, the snow was so bad that a couple of the typical mail drops through the Sierras were still closed for the season. Tuolumne, the entire roof of the general store there caved in, and they weren't going to open until August or September. And
Wow.
I was passing through there, as were most of the other hikers, in June and July. And so that was closed. Red's Meadow was closed. There was this one stretch where I'm like counting the math, and what normally would have been, I don't know, 5-6 days tops through any significant stretch, we had to at one point pack almost 13 or 14 days of food, because we had to keep going past all of the mail drops. We had to come out.
Your boyfriend was working this out, because did he know about these closures? Did he send you enough food then?
Oh yeah. So he was so on top of it. We would, at that point I was hiking with a small little trail family, and we would get to the top of the highest peak, and we would text him, and we'd be like, what are the conditions of the next stretch? How many miles, what pace? And he would have this entirely elaborate, like, well, this one river is overflowing, and this one is flowing at X amount of feet per second. And he was so on top of it that he earned a trail name having been at home. So my trail family nicknamed him Mission Control, because he was the one that we radioed in for.
That is
info.
impressive. That's impressive to get a trail name when you're not actually on the trail. I do like that.
Oh no, it's great. But yeah, we had to come out at Mammoth at one point. Like, we had to exit the trail to find trail towns that were further away than the typical hiker would have done in a normal year. And so, but going back to like when we looked at that 13 days of food with a bear can, nonetheless, which is the worst. When I weighed my bag next to my hiking buddy's wet bag, at this point I was hiking with a different group of people. Their bags weighed almost 50% more. Their food bags weighed 50% more than mine did. So 3,000 calories on a ketogenic diet weighs about a pound a day. But on a typical 3,000 calorie diet, that's about 1.5 pounds a day. And again,
I tell you, Jessie, this seems so anti-intuitive, if that's the word, counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It does to you, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sure people listening think that can't be right, but I mean, I'm sure you're telling me it is because you did it that way.
Yeah, no, if you do the math, I mean, if you look at, there's a whole bunch of charts available for thru hikers, which tell you that like, what are the most calorie dense foods to pack in your bag? The top 10 foods on that list are ketogenic foods. They're macadamia nuts, they're olive oil, they're almond butter, they're peanut butter. Those things are all ketogenic. And so now imagine if your entire bag was just made up of those foods, your entire bag is going to weigh less than for the same number of calories. And so on a thru hike, you're not eating 3,000 calories a day, you're eating 4 or 5. And so imagine that difference in bag optimization weight scaled up over more calories. And so my bag was featherweight. I cruised through the Sierras without too much of a problem. And so I was doing, 30, 35 miles a day through the desert while everybody else was struggling a little bit more than I was. And I didn't understand why. And it was a combination of my bag weighed less, which was just great. And I just loved that, being able to like compare bags with other people around me. But also it gave me more energy. I was able to hike longer than a lot of my hiking buddies because they would climb to the top of the mountain, tire out, eat a Snickers bar, refuel for the next stretch, and then keep going. And my energy, again, diesel engine, was more consistent. It was more, I'd wake up in the morning and I just really wouldn't need to stop. I'd stop for lunch because, my, salami and cheese on a low carb wrap took some time to sit down and eat. But other than that, I didn't have the need to rest. It was just this continual drive to move forward.
That is extraordinary to me. To me, it's extraordinary anyway, because I had to rest all the bloody time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's an age thing for me as well. So that's the difference you spotted between you and other hikers. Were there any other differences you saw?
I think that was the big one. I think that the ability to hike a little bit longer in the day, it was actually the reason why my hiking buddy and I, the one that I started the trail with, couldn't keep hiking together, because he was on the typical thru hiker diet and our paces just could not line up. And so he would power ahead much faster than I was. And again, his energy, if you're carb fueled, is more burst speed. Your body wants to burn as much energy as quickly as possible. And so that's why you eat a Snickers bar or Pop-Tart or whatever, sugar laden food you have, and then you charge up the mountain at an incredible speed. Mine was more like slow and methodical. So I would just follow behind him, and then I'd find him at the top and he would want to break. And I'm like, well, I have energy, I'm going to keep going. And he'd get annoyed that I wanted to keep going. And we just ended up in this friction. And eventually about 3 weeks in, I was like, I can't do this anymore, because he wanted to stop pretty early in the evening. I had another 2 or 3 hours of energy in me, and I knew that this wasn't going to work out. So in the interest of our friendship, I was like, you stay here, I'm going to keep hiking. And so, yeah, we split up at that point, and I found a group that had a bit of a more steady pace that I was looking for. And even that group was the eat a Snickers bar and power up through the mountain. They were just willing to hike further later in the day than I was.
To me, this is so interesting. As I said to you, I'm thinking of doing the Appalachian Trail next year. But I'm going to do the Appalachian Trail next year, and I wonder whether I could even consider doing something like this. I'd worry that I'd screw it up, because I did eat a terrible diet when I was on it. Snickers and honey buns and things like that.
God, yeah.
Oh my gosh, 800 calories in about 3 mouthfuls. It was just extraordinary stuff, and it felt great at the time. But if you could have this more sensible approach to it, that might be quite nice. And tell us about, when you did talk to me about it, freeze-dried cheese, which sounds fairly revolting, but you tell me it's quite nice.
Yeah. So one of the things that I miss a lot on a ketogenic diet is a crunch. Like, you can't have chips and pretzels. And so the texture of crunch is something that you miss. But the same process that freeze dries food for your typical store bought option meals in a like an REI or a Gear Footer, that same process can freeze dry cheese. And so you can have freeze dried these little like tiny crisps, and they end up super lightweight and they're super calorie dense, and you just throw a bag and hit the trail, and they taste like really cheesy potato chips, and they're just incredible. But they're like 3 or 4 times as nutritionally dense as potato chips. So don't bring Fritos, bring freeze dried cheese.
Dear me. So when you returned home after you finished your hike and you got through it, you had no real problems on there at all, apart not maybe hiking problems, but you had no real dietary problems on there at all, did you?
No, none. It was super easy. And everybody always asks, were you keto 100% through? And I always say like 98% through. And the reasoning being was I think there was 3 or 4 meals that I went off keto because it was part of the hike. It wasn't for energy. I didn't come into town and just, shove pancakes in my face. But if something was literally like an experience, I would go off. So the pancake challenge in Sayad Valley, So you go and you eat these like 5 hubcap sized pancakes. And I was like, well, clearly I have to do this.
Quite right too. Yeah.
And so I roll into town and I consumed like, I think 2.5 or 3 of them. And then of course it's like one of the steepest climbs out of the valley. And so me and my 4 other hikers who have all done this challenge together are just feeling like trash and just.
And that's interesting. Did you feel the difference straight away?
Oh yeah. No, your body is so happy to have its, for lack of a better phrase, it's drug again. It like, you get this rush of endorphins. You're happy eating. And then you go, oh, now I feel awful. And I got a headache and I wanted to vomit. And part of it was eating, 3.5, massive pancakes. But the other part was just like, you're reintroducing the easy sugar back into your body, and your body instantly shuts off its fat burning source. And so it took 2 or 3 more days to get back into it. The next morning I woke up feeling hungover. And not feeling great. So
how interesting.
You have to be deliberate about it.
So you return home and you started to think about the commercial possibilities. And this isn't going to turn into a commercial for Next Mile Meals, because I've looked at your website and it's interesting because you're more of a proponent of the lifestyle as opposed to trying to shove products down people's face.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that and why you started thinking about that.
Sure. So about halfway through, when I was realizing that like keto was totally possible and might actually be a better option for especially through hikers, and remembering how difficult it was for me to find food on my trail,
Sure.
I posted a website outside of Mount Shasta and at this tiny little trail library, and I smelled like death and it was awful. And I'm so sorry to the librarian that watched me do this for a couple hours. But I just posted a website and I was like, I'm hiking the PCT ketogenically. If anybody's interested, here's an email form. Here's how you can follow me on Instagram. Maybe I'll post these recipes. Maybe there's like a community out there of keto hikers that I didn't even know about that have been like also struggling. And then I didn't think about it again. And then I crossed into Canada. And as I'm like on my way home, I'm sitting in the Seattle airport on the way back to San Francisco. And I just like checked it again. And I was astonished to find thousands of people who were like, yes, oh my goodness, yes, please. I thought that this entire hike, thousands. Yeah. And they thought that, all of their hobbies, whether it was kayaking or hunting or, fishing and hiking, they thought all of these were off limits to them. Like you said earlier in this show, keto is not just used as a personal choice and like a lifestyle change. It's also used medically. So it's used to treat epilepsy and diabetes. And it's actually coming out as like a pretty solid treatment for Alzheimer's too. And so there's a whole bunch of really great reasons to do a ketogenic diet. But it's incredibly hard because it requires so much preparation and it's not really mainstream yet. And so these thousands of people were just like clamoring for an option. And so we started a blog and we started posting recipes and suggestions and evaluations of different products that were on the market. And, here's the math behind why keto is great. And then as part of that, I took the 6 meals that I had made at the beginning of trail and I went out to a co-packer and I had them make them. And now we sell them without much cost. It's like, we're not out to get rich over this. We're here to provide an option for people who are keto or want to eat a little bit better on trail, that don't want to, eat the rice and beans and the really cheap pasta. If you go into a Gear Fitter, the meals that are there are $7-8, and they're all just filler. Like the rice and the pasta that goes into them is 10 cents to the company, but they gouge people on them. And so here we have meals that are 100% meat and vegetables and cheese, and they keep for years. And so they're just as trail safe as, anything else you buy. But now people with like restricted diets. So we had a couple on the AT this year who were both diabetic, and they messaged us this lovely email, and they just said like, we did not think our this hike was possible. But now we're like, they packed Next Mile Meals the entire way. And we decorated all of their mail drop boxes for them. And it was delightful to see photos. And
I'm sure.
It's become a really great community. And
let me tell people what the name of the site is. Nextmilemeals.com, isn't it?
Nextmilemeals.com. And so there's a blog there. Go check it out. We have a couple keto friendly products, or even if you're just a thru hiker looking for higher fat options and you're still going to add rice to everything, go for it. I mean, these are great for those too. And then the blog's there. And then there's some really great inspiring stories on our Instagram as well at Next Mile Meals.
Well, I'll put those links in the show notes. Last couple of questions. Are you aware of many other people hiking ketogenically now, or were you one of the first, as far as you know, to thru hike with it?
I always dislike saying the phrase, I was the first to thru hike, but I like to say I was the first known hiker to do so, because after after 2 months of trying to figure out if anybody else had ever done this, I can pretty conclusively say no, that, or at least nobody had posted about it publicly. There was a bunch of people in smaller communities doing 3 or 4 day hikes and showing what sort of dehydrated meals they were making, but no through hikers. And so,
Wow.
as far as I know, and I'm totally happily willing to be corrected. I hope there's others out there. And if you're listening to this and you did it before I did, please, oh my goodness, please contact me. I want to talk to you. And why didn't you share that information? But this year, we know of the couple on the AT. There was what was her name, Tanya, through the PCT. So there's a couple PCT hikers who were keto. We had a couple people on the long trail. We had 2 down in New Zealand at the Te Aurora who tried. We unfortunately can't export our meals to them, but they were like, well, we sent them some recipes. We're like, here's what you can find in grocery stores. Like, so sorry, like you can't be our customers, but like, we want to support you in any way we can. So there's a couple international hikers, and I'm noticing that as keto becomes more widely accepted as a really positive lifestyle choice, that the people hiking keto are also becoming a little more either vocal or more numerous in number. And so it's been great to watch the community be like, no, this is a totally different way to hike, and it doesn't matter. We're still going to do it and be successful.
Yeah. So you be doing any more through hiking this way? You've got any more plans?
Oh, concrete plans, not yet, but 1 day plans, absolutely. I want to do the CDT and the Te Aurora. Like I'm definitely not done. And I had such a great time and felt so amazing. Like if you've done a through hike or partial through hike, then like that feeling of strength you have, it's the best shape you'll ever be in your life. And it brought a smile to my face to watch my body and feel my body move in really efficient ways. And then I came home and I'm not unhealthy now. I climb and I go to the gym and I eat keto, but you can't possibly compete with walking 30 miles a day and eating a clean diet.
No. But interestingly enough, and I don't know whether you've got any opinions on this, women didn't tend to lose anywhere near as much weight as the men on the Appalachian Trail. I mean, I lost 60 pounds. I looked like I looked like a skeleton in the end. I looked terrible. I was the best I'd ever felt in my life, but I went from 245 to 185 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And it was really unhealthy. I looked dreadful. I know I did. So I'm wondering whether this would have the same impact upon me. So I don't want to get it was catastrophic weight loss in many ways in my case.
My partner is going to be hiking the next time. And so he came out for I'm going to say it's like a 13-day stretch. So he did keto on trail for 13 days, and he lost a little bit of the water weight you lose at the beginning of the trail.
Right, yeah.
But he wrote a blog post about how amazing he felt on it, because we noticed the same thing. So women's bodies do react differently. It's because our bodies are programmed to whatever happens, whatever difficulty or low nutrient are available to you. Our bodies are supposed to be able to have children at all costs, which I say as a person without kids is frustrating to hear, but it's true. And so our bodies cling to fat and muscle far better than men's bodies, which is why women end up ending trails.
Mine cling to fat pretty comfortably. Don't you worry about that.
But knowing that difference existed, I wanted to make sure that my claims that I finished the trail looking healthier than my hiking companions was a true statement, and not just because of my gender. And so when my hiking partner and my life partner, my boyfriend, he also did his section for 2 weeks, and he felt great. And he was like, I can't wait to through hike the next one with you and keep to this as well. And so hopefully very soon we'll have a bit more of evidence of men keto hiking. There's one guy who's section hiked about half the PCT keto, and then the AT couple were women, and the PCT hiker was a woman. So we've got a lot of women out there willing to take chances. So come on, guys, let's see how it goes.
Is the guy who's done part of the PCT, has he recorded it's been beneficial for him?
Oh yeah, he wasn't able to finish his through hike, but I believe he's also been blogging about the stuff that he keeps keto in the real life and or in front country, I should say, not real life. It's all real life. And then he blogs about his 3-day hikes, and he does some wilderness trips too that are still keto. So he still keeps to it and still thinks it's the way to go.
Okay. Well, look, you know what? I'm so pleased you shared this with us, because I think people want different alternatives. They don't necessarily want to eat 6 Snickers, peanut butter, and a honey bun for lunch. So it might well be a nice little alternative for people. So I really appreciate you coming along and talking to us.
Absolutely. And have your listeners email me if they have any questions about keto or anything. We're always happy to be a source of information.
Any contact information you want to give us in the show notes, I'd be very happy to put them in there. So I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
How about that? I find that subject fascinating, particularly because she has more energy, a lighter bag, and her diet involves unlimited bacon. I also thought that she described really well how the body understands what it needs to burn. I'd like to learn more on the subject and would love to hear from any of you who have tried specific and different diets on any of the long-distance trails. And I thought one of the many compelling things that she said was that most of the top 10 foods advised for backpackers are ketogenic. So I strongly urge you to head across to Jessie's website, www.nextmilemeals.com, and check out everything on there. It's really interesting. And now another young woman. This is Katie Amphlett, and she is one of the upcoming class of 2019. I'll be trying to keep in touch with this little group and hopefully interviewing them as they pass me by on the trail. Here's Katie. Okay, we've got another member of the class of 2019, Katie Amphlett. Hi, Katie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Steve?
I'm pretty good. You wrote to me when I asked for people who are going in 2019 to tell me if they'd like to talk about, their upcoming hike. And I've got a bunch of questions, which now, these are set questions for everybody, but we want a conversation about this. So firstly, please introduce yourself. Now, your name's Katie, your age, where you live, and what you do, and your start date on the AT.
Well, yep. As you said, my name is Katie, and I am 28 years old. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, grown up in Wisconsin my entire life. And I am a kindergarten teacher, which I am leaving to do the trail, but I will return to afterwards.
All right. And have you got a start date for the AT yet?
I haven't picked an exact date yet, but definitely beginning of April, maybe the end of March, a little bit later.
All right. So you want to do the AT. Firstly, really, how long have you been thinking about doing this, and kind of why the AT?
Well, I guess I've known about the AT for basically my entire life. I watched a documentary ages ago, and I read the Walk in the Woods right after it came out. But I never really considered it seriously until about 3 years ago. I was visiting a friend in North Carolina, and we went to Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and we drove up to Clingman's Dome, and I just saw all these thru hikers with their giant backpacks. And I think they had someone had dropped pizza off for them or something. They were all sitting around eating pizza. And it just really sparked something in me that I was like, this seems so cool. I need to check this out more. And I started researching very obsessively and have basically not stopped since then. So
it's funny. You're going to learn something about A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson when you get out there. You know, opinion about that book is so split. I mean, a lot of the people I met were inspired by that book. I was personally. When I read that book was when I first started thinking about it 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was first published. But some people either love it or completely hate it, and you will find that when you're out there. So,
just from being in some of those Facebook groups, I've realized a lot of those books have really polarizing opinions, like Wild and Walk in the Woods, those ones.
Yeah, but please though, don't take anything from Facebook as fact. Form your own opinions when you're out there, and people are much kinder on the trail. So it's been on your radar for quite a long time. Are you actually a hiker generally, or is this your first biggish hike?
I'm generally a hiker. I've hiked my whole life. I've only started backpacking in the past about 5 years. But I've done some pretty sizable chunks, my longest being about 75 miles. So this will definitely be different, but I have some experience.
Okay. So you mentioned you're a kindergarten teacher. So you're deserting your children. How terrible of you. So how are you actually able to take the time off work?
Well, I kind of had the same feeling. And so I've actually already left my full-time job. Back in June, I finished up at the school I'd been working at for 3 years. And this year I'm working as a substitute teacher. So I'm actually just starting a long-term position, subbing for someone who's on maternity leave, which worked out kind of perfectly. But yeah, I didn't want to abandon a class partway through the year. So I decided to take some time, sub. So it's really added to this adventure for me. It's kind of like a whole year process rather than just the trail itself.
I would think actually, funny enough, that'd be an interesting blog to have that, the preparation time as well as the hike time. It's, for you then, it is literally a year's process, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've been trying to document it some on my Instagram, kind of going through the whole process of what this has looked like. And reassuring my family that I'm not crazy, haven't lost my mind.
Oh, no. That's never going to work. They're going to think you're crazy, whatever you say. So don't worry about
Exactly.
that. So what are you doing? Are you going northbound, southbound, or are you flip-flopping, or as I keep trying to say, oboing?
Oboing. I like that. I'm planning to head northbound. But if worse came to worse and I needed to do a flip-flop, I would do that too. I'm going to finish it.
You're going to finish it. Oh, how about that? So you say you've been hiking. Have you taken a different approach to putting your gear together for this particular trip, or is this? Do you just use the stuff you've already got, or are there specific things you feel you're going to need on this trip that you haven't needed on previous trips?
Well, I guess I've upgraded quite a bit of stuff. As far as what I had was like the tent I originally had when I started backpacking was just like a $30 Target tent that weighed about 7 pounds.
Nice.
So obviously I will not be carrying that one on the trail with me. I've upgraded that. And then also when I backpack, typically I'm with somebody else. And so this will be my first long trip really on my own. So I've needed to downsize a couple of things, get a smaller cook kit, smaller tent, that kind of stuff.
How do you feel about? I mean, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about this. So you've not. Oh, I say slept by yourself. You know what I mean. You've not you've not spent the time hiking and camping with somebody in the past. You have spent the time hiking and camping with somebody in the past. Have you ever been out on a night hike by yourself, or on a hike rather, and camped by yourself at night?
Last summer I did 6 days on the AT by myself because before I ruined my whole life and quit my job and did all this, I was like, I have to make it at least 6 days. So I gave it a try. I really only ended up camping totally by myself one night, with like nobody else in the vicinity. And I will admit I was absolutely terrified. But I got some sleep.
Yeah, you slept.
Absolutely.
You woke up in the morning and you didn't die, did you? How about that?
I didn't. And it was like the most empowering experience. And I came back and I was like, see, Mom, didn't die. See, Dad, I'm fine. Made it out alive. No bear attacks.
Yeah. How well did that argument go down?
They tried to call me constantly while I was on the trail for those 6 days. And so, but I think it did give them a little bit of peace of mind that I was like, I met other people out there. They were nice. They were helpful. So,
yeah. So you got your pack together, or most of it. I presume you got most of it together now. As you've been preparing this for some months now, or not?
Yeah, I've got almost everything. I am something of a gear junkie though, so I just keep acquiring things, most of which I probably will not bring, but I have quite the collection. It might continue to grow.
And do you have a thought about how much it's going to weigh?
Right now, I'm thinking my base weight would probably be somewhere between 12 and 13 pounds.
Wow. Cool.
So on the lighter side, but I'm also a smaller person, so I want to make sure that I'm not ruining myself early on with a lot of weight. Yeah,
I took the benefit of being a fat bloke. Being 245 pounds, you can take a quite large percentage of your weight. So that's why I deliberately bulked up for it, obviously.
Yeah, there you go.
So how are you going to? You're young anyway, so I guess that's relatively easier for you. But how are you going to prepare for the physicality of the hike? And what are you expecting in terms of the physicality?
I guess I'm expecting it to be tough. Everyone I've talked to or heard from, even if they're in like tip-top shape, they're still, I don't know, struggling at the beginning, those big hills. I've started doing some kind of more like cardio training, I guess, because that's what I'm most concerned about is just like, I want to be able to hike up a hill without having to stop every 40 feet and catch my breath. I tried to walk around my neighborhood wearing my pack, but I felt a little bit silly doing that. Probably get back into it.
Probably get arrested for doing that as well.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so just focusing mostly on cardio, a little strength training, trying to, I've had some knee pain in the past, so trying to kind of target those areas where I think I'll need a little more support.
Yeah, you're going to wear a knee brace to start, or you're going to take one just in case? Because the downhills, that was a big surprise to me, how impactful the downhills are pretty quickly as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not planning to start with a knee brace, but I'll definitely consider getting one. I have some like physical therapy type exercises that I've stolen from other people. So just trying to focus on that. And I am going to start off with low miles, force myself to go slow at the beginning.
I think if there's one thing anybody can learn on this hike, it is that they need to start with low miles. You just got to ease yourself into this hike, not go for a 15-mile day straight away. I mean, I didn't do 15 miles for about the first 2 months, but that was me.
Exactly.
But even then, just be aware that you need to ease yourself into it, definitely. And have you considered the mental aspects of the hike? And how do you think you're going to cope when you have those tough times, which you definitely will have at some stage?
Yeah, I've tried to prepare myself as much as I can, but it's like, yeah, it's one of those things like, how do I prepare myself for this? Do I just think about when I'm in the rain for the 6th day in a row and I hate what I'm eating and like all of that stuff? Like, how am I going to envision that? So I just try to think about other times in my life, I guess, where I've had hardship and pushed through. And I don't know, I tend to be a really optimistic person, so I'm worried that I'm being overly optimistic at this point, but I don't know. I'll just try to maintain that optimism on the trail. And yeah, and I guess just thinking back to how excited I've been for like 3 years to do this. So even if it's the worst, remembering this excitement that I'm feeling now.
Yeah. Never quit on a bad day. That's the rule you're going to learn pretty much straight away. Never quit on a bad day. If you decide after, as you say, those 6 straight days of rain, this is just so not for me, then just stop it. But stop it once you wake up the next morning, not that day, because it's a horrible feeling. And I'm sure anybody who does leave on a bad day, they must regret it for the rest of their lives. I really think that. So have you planned your money for this trip? Have you worked? I'm not asking obviously how much you're going to take, but have you budgeted for certain things, a number of days off trail? What do you see your plan being in terms of 0 days and going into town?
I guess I haven't really planned 0 days, or I have kind of a rough estimate of how many days it will take me, but it's very rough, like, months of difference between the longest and shortest. But I just I guess I picked a number of how much money I wanted to save, and which was much more than what was recommended by other people. And so that I have a huge contingency, because I'm like, if I'm getting off trail, I want it to be because I want to get off trail, not because I don't have enough money or, anything like that. So
there are days that you need to sleep in a bed and not in the woods. There just are,
exactly.
That time. Yeah.
If I get injured or something, I want to be able to take the time off to recover and not have to feel like I need to go home because I don't have money to, stay in a hotel with neurovirus or whatever.
Nice. You talk about a positive outlook, which I think is really important when you've got to do this. How do you think, are you daunted at all by the odds of only 1 in 4 people finish this? Or do you feel that you've prepared sufficiently to enable you to carry through? And do you think everybody thinks they're going to complete it, obviously. Yeah. What is it about you that makes you think that you can get this done?
I am daunted by that statistic of 1 in 4. And I think my greatest fear going into this is that I'm going to get injured and have to get off the trail and not have a choice in the matter. So yeah, that does scare me a little bit, but I still feel like even if that happened, it's like, I'd be ready. I'll go back another year and try it again, give it another go. But I would just hope that my hiking experience gives me a little bit of an edge. And, not that and that's what I'm saying. I don't want to be overly optimistic. Like I keep saying, yes, I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to finish it. But at the same time, maybe I won't. And that's okay. As long as I get out there and try, I think that's what's the important part for me.
I did find that one of the things that people were most not scared of, but things they were more concerned about when they were on the trail was the thought of not finishing. And that's I think that was a sad reflection of how people get too bent out of shape when finishing is the only answer. If you do a 1,000-mile hike, it's a pretty damn great hike,
Exactly.
So, that thought of
that's
not
a lot
finishing,
longer than most people.
By about 950 miles. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're out there and you talk about your mum and dad, obviously, you're going to get logistical support from them. They're going to send you packages, or you're going to resupply from the trail.
I'm planning to do most of my resupply just from the trail. Maybe here or there I'll get things sent to me, but no, I feel like I'm not organized enough or a good enough planner to have things sent ahead like that. So I'm just going to rely on getting off trail and going into town.
Well, I've always thought not being a good planner is a really good thing. I know that, and those who really do plan everything, they're great, and they love that side of how they do the trail. But for me, not knowing anything was the biggest strength I had, I think, because if I'd known what it was like, I don't think I would have done it in the first place. so now you learn these things and you just feel better once you've done them. You try not to make those mistakes again. And I think I'm definitely going to resupply on the trail next time. I think it'll be so much easier, less stressful to get to a post office before it closes and that sort of thing. So I think it's a good idea to resupply from the trail.
Exactly.
And also, and what part of the trail are you actually looking forward to the most? Either a place or aspects of the trail? Is there something you've thought about? Man, I'm looking forward to that.
I think I'm looking forward to kind of two totally different sections. I'm very excited to hike through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park because I've been there as a tourist on the road doing the little, pull out, hike a mile. And so to see that just from a different perspective. And I think that's just such beautiful country. And then also the whites. I'm so excited for that. And I know it's going to be a huge challenge, but yeah, I've never been there. And just every picture I've seen, every video I've seen, it seems, so spectacular. And I'm looking forward to the challenge of it if I make it that far.
Two things about that. You're right. You've never seen it. And once you get there, you won't believe it when you see it. It'll be 20 times better than any video you've ever seen on the whites.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary. I always get the hairs on the back of my neck go up when I even think about the whites. Going above tree line for the first time. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing how beautiful it is up there. So that is a real treat. But of course, you'll be nearly 2,000 miles on your legs by then. So you'll be fine as far as that's concerned. That's not a problem. So they're the things you're looking forward to. What about thing you're not looking forward to? What are you looking? What are you thinking about? What do you want to do the least?
I guess, let me think. Maybe just those middle stretches, like, Virginia, Pennsylvania, where it's like not a lot of excitement. And
that's not true. Virginia's great.
That's actually, I did my little practice section hike last summer in Virginia, and I did like the McAfee Knob area up to the James River, and that was beautiful and awesome. But I'm worried about like more where I'll be mentally at that point in the trail, that it'll be, not fresh and it's not the start anymore. And I'm not like in the honeymoon phase of the trail, but not within reach of the end. And so
there's something new every day, Katie. There really is something new, and you think, oh my gosh, look at that. And that's beautiful. Or maybe you have a sucky day. Well, then that's all part of it as well. I think you'll get so much out of it. They talk about the Virginia blues. I think it's because Virginia goes on so long, you don't feel you're making any progress. It's a quarter of the trail, and passing over any state line is a really good feeling. You feel like you're making progress. In Virginia, you don't feel like you're making much progress, but there's some great ridge walking. There really is. So I think you'll like it more than you think.
Okay, you're right. Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Pennsylvania sucks. No, do you think there's one thing that could keep you off the trail before now and then? What might that be?
It's really hard to think of anything. I mean, save like some huge tragedy in my family or my life. That's really all at this point. I've already quit my job. I've already got the money.
You sound well along the way. Yeah, so you're definitely going. And what do you hope to gain from this experience as either a life lesson or something you gain out of this hike that you think will carry you forward in your after trail life?
I think the thing that I'm looking forward to most is just like being connected to this amazing community that surrounds the AT, and also being more connected to myself and just spending time with myself, which is something I haven't always done or felt comfortable doing. And so kind of, the combination of those two things, being more connected to a community and being more connected to myself.
I got pissed off with myself after about 800 miles. So I was done with myself by then. So I started listening to music instead.
Sick of spending time with yourself. Yeah.
There's spending time with yourself, and there's way too much time with yourself as well. So that you'll have to work your way through that. And the last question is, and I'd like you to sort of commit yourself to this. Will you come back on the show and tell us how it went, whether you finish or not?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I've listened to so many of the episodes of your show, and I find all the experiences so enlightening and just interesting to hear whether they finished or not, if they went back. all the different facets. So for sure.
Oh, you're committed. Good. I like that.
I'm committed. Sign me up.
All right, Katie. Well, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for telling us about this. And I only wish you well. And I may even see you, because I'm going to be going much slower than you, so you may actually pass me. And what I'd like to do when we're out there is to try to connect and have an interview actually on the trail as you fly past me. So I'll try to keep in touch with you somehow when I'm out there, just so I know where you are roughly, so I can prepare to make sure I meet you, so I can record you actually on the trail. Okay.
Okay, absolutely. Sounds good.
That's cool. Appreciate it. Okay, have a great time. Happy trails, and hopefully I'll see you out there.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Cheers then. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Isn't that good? She thought ahead and didn't want to leave her kids mid-semester, so she quit her job in the summer to prepare and take up a different role. She's also obviously been listening when we've said in the past that you can never take too much money with you on a journey like this. I wish Katie and the other class of 2019 members the best of luck. Next week, we've got the last in our band of 5. Now, I just want to touch on iTunes for a second. One of our listeners, and I apologise for not giving him or her the recognition because I've forgotten who it was, pointed out that the first 20 or so episodes were no longer available on iTunes. I noticed that our downloads had gone down a touch recently, and just thought it was because some of you weren't that interested in the Camino shows. But you see, about 40% of our downloads every day are from past episodes. And of course, when they aren't available on a platform, people can't hear the show. Luckily, it was only iTunes, and the issue has now been resolved. I can tell that it has, because this Tuesday's downloads spiked massively upwards once the shows were available again. We normally get about 400 downloads on a Tuesday, but this week there were 843, so I knew that the shows were back. So if you're using an Apple product to listen to the show, head over to the Podcasts app on your phone and subscribe to make sure that you get every episode delivered to your phone when it's released on a Thursday morning. Now we move on to The Year We Seized the Day by Elizabeth Best and Colin Bowles. This is day 21, and the tension that has been building since Fromista at last comes to the boil in the awesome city of Lyon. This involves considerable cursing on Colin's part, of course, so the bleep has been used quite a bit in one section. It's also a very, very dark chapter, so much so that when I was editing, I noticed that I said, "Wow," at the end of recording my part. It is really intense. I'll see you next week. Chapter 22, Day 21, Lyon Rest Day. Colin, Pieta with a fishbone. Lyon wakes later than my city. 8:30 and the streets are deserted. No joggers, cyclists or people rushing to work. Just an old man shuffling along and a police car slowly patrolling the cobblestones. Church bells toll the quarter hours. I find a bar that is open. Inside, a solitary businessman nurses an espresso and watches the news reports of bushfires in the west of the province on the TV over the bar. It's a typical Spanish bar. Dusty bottles of J&B, Cuddy Sark, Frangelico are lined up on the shelves. Some of them look like they have sat there since Columbus was in short pants. After breakfast, it's time for a little sightseeing. I take a stroll around the Pantheon. I've heard it compared to the Sistine Chapel. Having seen it, I have to tell you that is like comparing my passport photograph to the Mona Lisa. All I see here are some very touching images of soldiers disemboweling and beheading small children, and even those look like they were painted by my 10-year-old nephew. If the Pantheon is a disappointment, the cathedral is breathtaking. One of the most awesome works of art you will ever see. It's too beautiful for heaven, let alone Lyon. I gaze open-mouthed like a country boy at a vault of golden stone and stained glass that could have been cut from sapphire. I may not be in the presence of God, but I know I am in the presence of great religious art. It's not like a church, it's a museum with no cloakroom. A sign says no photographs, but everyone ignores it. Kodachrome has usurped humility. In one of the chapels, another sign says, "For pray only," but people just lollop on in, gawp, and roll the videotape anyway. "Hey Martha, get a shot of that woman praying over there." "No, not her, that one crying and praying for a sick baby, you moron." There's even a Pieta that looks like Mary with Jesus over a knee trying to dislodge a fishbone from his throat. I wander the streets. Nothing works. Nothing dislodges my own fishbone. I don't know what to do with myself. This is more than suicide, heartbreak, estrangement. There is an aloneness at the heart of this. Is it an occupational hazard? A lot of writers are weird, even the famous ones. Look at Green, O'Neill, Hemingway. a litany of depression, alcoholism and self-destructive behaviours. After they shot Hemingway full of juice and made him normal, he blew his own brains out because he couldn't write anymore. At home I can distract myself. Here it's not possible, and I can't stand this, trying to live with my strangeness, trying to justify it, explain it to myself and to other people. I am raw as an open wound. I do not know if it's me or the world. For years I did not connect, could not understand why my wife sometimes described me as distant and aloof. When I did feel this spark, this connection, I could not detach it from an engagement with the world I had kept so long at a comfortable distance. Is this normal? I have no idea. I have talked to guys who claim they have never been in love in their lives, and one of them had been married for 20 years, as I had. To follow my heart, I had to break someone else's. Am I going crazy or finally going sane? I feel like I should be in a dark room with a case of bourbon, not out here in the sunlight where everyone can watch the pieces drop away. When Ellie sees what a mess I am, she'll lose respect for me, if she hasn't already. I'd rather she hate me than feel sorry for me, and getting her to hate me, well, I know how to do that. When it comes to women, it's a reflex I learned at my mother's knee.
Ellie, a good thing gone bad. There's good and there's bad, in life and in people. We all have it within us, and it's the way of the world around us. Pleasure and pain, love and hate, the light and the dark, right and wrong. Some say the way to happiness is learning to find the good in bad, to turn tragedies into triumphs, problems into opportunities, to accept and appreciate that all experiences hold value, despite the circumstances. That way, regardless of the outcome, if a lesson is learned, then no experience is ever lost. It's essentially about acceptance. As far as I know, the theory works well in relation to most things, but on a practical level, it's another story. When it comes to human nature, the rules aren't so simple. Sometimes good people do bad things. Other times, bad people surprise with good deeds. And acceptance of all is not always rewarded. Search too hard for the good and you can overlook the bad. Passive can be perceived as powerless. Make allowances and people tend to take advantage. Demonstrate too much patience and they lose respect for you. Compromise too often and eventually you will lose respect for yourself. Every situation we face brings with it a choice about how we act or react. You can search for the good, practice patience, make allowances and compromise, or you can choose not to. But despite your decision or how rationally you appear to handle a situation, some things just hurt and you have to let them. Unfortunately, Leon is not all fun and fashion. Time spent in the city is both good and bad. In many ways, it is both the breaking and the making of Colin and me. We meet mid-afternoon outside a cafe. He's obviously got a few beers under his belt and is wearing the same bitter expression I've seen every day since the morning he woke him from Mister. The moment we sit down together, the clock begins ticking. A few shots of sarcasm to kickstart the conversation preempts what's ahead. I order a glass of wine and settle in. Here it comes. So what now, Ellie, after this book? What then? I tell Cole that I hope to keep writing, but that I first need to prove to myself I can. It's part of what this trip has come to mean to me, a physical challenge, an emotional test and a professional endeavour. My reply infuriates him, and as my drink arrives, there is an explosion. Across the table, his eyes grow wide, his face twists like a wrung-out rag. He arcs in his seat, his voice changes tone. Suddenly, I no longer know the man. My lack of confidence angers him to the point of rage. The storm sets in. This is the big one I've been dreading, and as it begins, I turn away. I've seen that look before. Hard to describe, but harder to look at. I sit stunned, listening to harsh, spiteful words spill across the table. For a moment, I switch off. The sound cuts out. My body goes numb and I'm afraid to move. Time slips and melts away. Seconds and minutes pass. Then from the corner of my eye, I sit him launch in his seat. The sound of the table rocking on the cobblestones snaps me back into attention. We sit staring at each other, both aware of the disruption we have caused, each waiting for the other to move. In the street, passers-by have stopped mid-stride. A small boy stands before us looking up in fear. Turning back to Colin, I suddenly realise I have just lost all respect for the man I had, until then, admired. Not even like or dislike remain. He's no longer right or wrong anymore, he is just there. And yet there I sit at the same table, a world away, refusing to move. Over the past 3 weeks, I've witnessed guilt eat away at the man like acid in his stomach. Given things we've discussed, the last thing I want to do is leave now and become another dose. Nor do I want to let him push me away, like he has so many women before me who have gotten too close. And I refuse to fade at the hands of another man, as I have done in the past. I will not crumble or crack, break or take the easy way out and walk away. Colin is not a hurtful man, but he does hurt. That doesn't make him wrong, it makes him human. Yet things like that don't just disappear.
Colin, see it my way or die. I meet Ellie for lunch in a tapas bar. The tapas bars give you little plates of food with every drink you buy. Potatoes in cream cheese sauce, slices of Spanish omelette dried to the texture of foam rubber, cheese croquettes, or, if you are unlucky, the local Spanish delicacy, bits of gristle in pig fat. But mostly it's good and filling snack food. Ellie has the excellent idea that it would be possible to live in the bars and never have to pay for anything to eat. The more you drink, the more nutrition you get. Drink your way to good health. I like the idea of the Latin life. But this is not a good lunch, and I'd love to say that it was Ellie's fault, but that would not be true. What do you think, Cole? Can I do this? Will I make it as a writer? A pretty innocent seeking of reassurance from someone who has, on his CV, quite a few books, so it's reasonable that she should ask it of me. Done it many times myself in the early days. What she gets back is unadulterated fury. She blinks at me in disbelief. A shoe-shine boy sitting nearby runs home to his mother. A couple at the surrounding tables drop their forks and stare. And did I just call her Helen? Me, I sort of levitate and watch myself slip out of Jekyll and into Hyde and wonder from a distance why I'm doing this. But it has only been a matter of time. The volcano has been rumbling away ever since we started walking. Because, you see, this is the trouble with me. I set myself up as the mentor, big brother, guru and Yoda all rolled into one. But guess what? It's lonely on a pedestal, and the pigeons shit on your head. No one asked me to be there but me. I think this is the only way anyone will ever love me, and I resent it so much it makes my teeth ache. They either thank me for showing them out of the darkness and leave, as my lover has famously done, or they buy the act and I am left trapped, lonely and needed. And you know what? It's a game, a manipulation. It's all about control. And it has rebounded on me in unimaginable ways, as it does in every life if you live long enough. My lover left me, my wife took pills, my daughters probably still love me, but one of them cannot stand to be in the same room as me. Grief, loss and self-hatred spill out of me in the main square in Lyon, and Ellie, you remember her, the poor girl with the knee and the up feet, is a recipient of 3 years of pent-up rage and frustration. I could not articulate any of these feelings, of course. It takes a geologist to explain lava. The volcano just blows. Even if I could have told her I was caught in a double bind. People love me for being the strong, silent type, not for being me, whoever the hell that is. So halfway through our pickled pig's foreskin, soaked in olive oil and our second beers, we stamp away from each other in opposite directions. Poor Ellie has no idea where this huge overreaction has come from. Mr. Control is losing control. Of himself, primarily. Thanks to a week looking at nothing but wheat fields, drinking too much, and apparently talking in my sleep to my dead wife, my anguished daughters, and a lover who bewilders me at every turn, the fault line is shifting under pressure. After Ellie has gone, I drink another couple of beers, and my considered and rational solution to all our problems is then to go looking for her to tell her it is all off. Finish the book yourself. I'm going home. Which is just about my answer for everything these days. Lyon has an airport, and I'm going to book a flight back to Australia. Until now, whenever I need to find Ellie, whether we were separated in a village or a large city, I always knew where she would be. We have always found each other. But tonight, I don't find her, thank God. For the first time, I can't find her anywhere. When I finally get back to our hotel room late at night, she's asleep. And by the morning, I have sobered up and calmed down. I decide to keep walking. See this out, and for some reason that is entirely beyond me, considering my erratic and abusive behaviour, so does she.